Hey guys, welcome to another daily pack opening here at the Games Repository. Today we've got Magic the Gathering, Journey into Nyx. Let's dive on in. First up we have Renown Weaver. 1 mana 1/1 green creature. Pay 2, sacrifice Renown Weaver, put a 1/3 green spider enchantment creature token with reach onto the battlefield. Not a bad little creature. Pretty efficient. 1 mana for a 1/1 is a very efficient starting cost. However, its ability, sacrifice it to put a 1/3 enchantment spider with reach into play is good. Potentially has a nice interaction with constellation cards, and also nets you a 1/3 with reach on turn 2 after maybe dealing 1 damage early on in the game, or providing a blocker that you can then sacrifice before combat damage is dealt. Not bad. Once again, strongest in limited. Maybe see some play in a few constructed green decks, but again, mostly a limited card. Next up, we have a black creature we've seen before. Dreadbringer Lampads. 5 mana 4/2, constellation ability. Pretty useful, giving other things intimidate. Very strong in limited, not so useful in constructed. Not quite efficient enough for mana cost. Next up, Pontiff Fertility. 1 mana green enchantment, pay 2, sacrifice Pontiff Fertility. Search library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle your library. This is a pretty good effect, one of the better in the cycle of the font enchantment cards. Netting you a basic land, very good for fixing your land, particularly good in limited again, though could see some play in mana ramp or multicoloured constructed decks. Next up, Nyx Infusion. 3 mana black enchantment aura. Enchant creature. Enchanted creature gets +2/+2 as long as it's an enchantment, otherwise it gets -2/-2. So, this allows you to pump up your enchantment creatures quite heavily, or lower your opponent's non-enchantment creatures. Pretty useful as a pseudo removal / buff card. Very effective in limited play, where you can either pump your creature, limit your opponent's creature, and swing in. Not so useful in constructed, however, could see some play as a budgetary card, especially in some sideboards. Next up we have the white spell in the Strive cycle. Talked about this one before. Giving it +1/+1 and indestructible is pretty useful, especially when you can cast it across multiple creatures. Allows you to keep creatures alive through creature removal. Overall, pretty efficient spell. We like the Strive cycle. Next up, Oppressive Rays. Once again, a card we've seen before. A card that I'm particularly fond of, especially in limited play. Very useful. Keeps your opponent's creatures locked down through the early game, and then makes them have to waste some mana late game. It's nice and efficient, I like it. It's a good spell. Next we have Magma Spray. 1 mana red instant Magma Spray deals 2 damage to target creature. If that creature would die this turn, exile it instead. Brilliant spell. Shock, but with a little extra. Even though it only attacks creatures, it is often a creature you'll be using this sort of spell on anyway. And the fact it exiles creatures can be very useful against decks that have some way to recur their creatures. Brilliant spell in both constructed and limited. Sees play in both. Very strong spell. Next up we have Mortal Obstinacy. 1 mana white enchantment aura. Enchant creature you control. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1. Whenever enchanted creature does combat damage to a player, you may sacrifice Mortal Obstinacy. If you do, destroy target enchantment. Much like the red version we saw before, efficient pump spell, 1 mana to give your creature +1/+1 is pretty useful. The fact you can sacrifice it to destroy enchantments is also useful. Again, mostly useful in limited. However, given the nature of this block with enchantment creatures, the fact you get to destroy enchantments with it could make it useful as a pseudo removal card in constructed. Next up we have the red card in the font cycle, Font of Ire. 2 mana red enchantment, pay 4, sacrifice Font of Ire. Font of Ire deals 5 damage to target player. Slightly more efficient Lava Axe. Could be useful for just dealing that little bit of extra damage you need to finish off your opponent. Although once again I see it being most effective in that way in limited rather than constructed. Constructed it's perhaps a bit too slow, goes across 2 turns and doesn't surprise your opponent. However, does make them think hard about their plays and about blocks. Now we start breaking into our uncommons. Next up, we have Crystalline Nautilus. 3 mana 4/4 blue enchantment creature. Bestow. For 5. When Crystalline Nautilus becomes a target of a spell or ability, sacrifice it. Enchanted creature gets +4/+4 and has, when this creature becomes a target of a spell or ability, sacrifice it. So, what we have here is an efficient creature, 3 mana for a 4/4, pretty strong. However, when it becomes a target of any spell or ability, you have to sacrifice immediately. Pretty useful early game in limited, where the amount of spells that can actually target the creature are much fewer than in constructed. Probably wouldn't bother to play it in constructed, but again, limited, useful. Its bestow ability is pretty effective for dealing quite a hefty amount of damage on one creature. They target that creature, it dies because of Crystalline Nautilus's negative ability, then you get the Crystalline Nautilus back for an extra hit. Not bad, pretty strong card. Sorry about all the coughing. Next up, Golden Hind Ox. This is a 6 mana 5/4 green enchantment creature with Constellation. Its Constellation effect is target creature must be blocked this turn if able. So whenever you cast an enchantment spell or this, you can give one of your creatures lure. This is pretty effective at managing to force the rest of your creatures through blockers. It's a good way for green to do this other than trample. Or can allow you to give, say, a creature with Death Touch and make all the other creatures block it. Good way to wipe out your opponent's creatures. Not a bad little combat trick. Once again, most effective for limited. Probably not strong enough to play in constructed. Next up, Disciple of Deceit. This is a 1 blue, 1 black, 1/3 creature with Inspired. Whenever Disciple of Deceit becomes untapped, you may discard a non-land card. If you do, search your library for a card with the same converted mana cost as that card, reveal it and put it into your hand. Then shuffle your library. So, pretty useful ability. Allows you to fix your hand, get rid of cards that you don't need, and go searching for more efficient cards. As a 1/3, it will survive quite a lot of early combats, especially with a nice efficient mana cost. Could be pretty useful in limited play for fixing your hand. In constructed, perhaps suffers from being reasonably easily removed, though could be quite an effective early game card for a Friday Night Magic type deck. Bit of blue-black to surprise some opponents. Not a bad creature. Next up we have our foil. Satyr Grove Dancer. This is a 2 mana green 1/1 creature. When Satyr Grove Dancer enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. Not a bad ability. 2 mana to play a 1/1 creature that also pumps one of your other creatures. Pretty efficient. Not bad. Probably play it in limited. Don't think I'd play it in constructed. Next up we have our rare. Dictate of the Twin Gods. 5 mana, enchantment, red. Flash. If a source would deal damage to a permanent or player, it deals double that damage to that permanent or player instead. Its steep mana cost keeps this ability from being quite as powerful as it seems. It's a very good effect. Doubling damage can allow you to really take people by surprise. Given that it has flash, this taking people by surprise is just perfect. It's a good spell. I like it. I like its ability, especially in red where you've got lots of burn spells or creatures with high attack values. The 5 mana cost keeps it from being truly powerful, but still keeps it being efficient enough to be relevant in some games. Especially useful in a multiplayer game you might be having with your friends where you just have to surprise everybody and finish off one player that's particularly bothering you. Overall, I like it. Strong. Don't know if I pick it in limited. Could be useful in some sealed games. Could be useful in some constructed games as a sideboard card, just to surprise your opponent with finishing them off in, say, red deck wins. Okay, thanks guys. Until next time.